The emergency beacon cut through the cold vacuum of space like a desperate scream. Ambassador Zephyria's elongated fingers trembled as she activated the distress signal from her ship's command console. Around her, the bridge crew of the diplomatic vessel Harmony's Edge moved with barely controlled panic. Ambassador, the Krex war fleet will be in firing range in 6 standard hours, reported Navigator Kellix, his blue-scaled face pale with fear. Our shields are down to 30% after that last attack. Zephyria nodded grimly, her large black eyes reflecting the red warning lights that bathed the bridge. The Krex Empire had finally made their move. After months of failed peace negotiations, they had launched a full-scale assault on the Galactic Council's outer territories. The diplomatic mission had been a trap from the beginning. Send the distress call on all frequencies, she ordered, her voice steady despite the circumstances. Include our coordinates and the nature of the threat. To whom should we address the message? Asked Communications Officer Trillex, his tentacled hands hovering over the control panel. Zephyria paused. The nearest council fleet was 3 days away, far too distant to help. The other member species had their own territories to defend. In desperation, she remembered reading about a relatively new species that had recently joined the Galactic Council as observers. They called themselves humans, and their home system was surprisingly close to their current location. Address it to any available vessels in the Sol system, she said. I believe that's where the humans are located. Trillex's eyes widened. Ambassador, with respect, the humans are a very young species. They've only been spacefaring for a few of their decades. What could they possibly do against a Krex war fleet? At this point, any help is better than none, Zephyria replied. Send the message. The distress signal traveled through space at faster than light speeds, carrying with it a simple message that would change the course of galactic history. This is Ambassador Zephyria of the Galactic Council diplomatic vessel Harmony's Edge. We are under attack by Krex forces and require immediate assistance. Our coordinates are attached. Any help would be greatly appreciated. 3 billion kilometers away, the signal reached the Sol system's communication networks. On Earth's moon, at Luna Command Center, the message was received by a young communication technician named Sarah Chen during what should have been a routine night shift. Sarah's coffee cup froze halfway to her lips as she read the translation that appeared on her screen. She read it again, then, a third time, before reaching for the emergency communication line to Earth. Command, this is Luna Station. We've received what appears to be a genuine distress call from an alien diplomatic vessel. They're requesting immediate assistance against hostile forces. The response came back within minutes. Luna Station, patch the signal through to Earth Command immediately. Priority Alpha authorization. Within an hour, the distress call had reached the highest levels of Earth's unified government. President Elena Rodriguez sat in the emergency session of the Global Defense Council, surrounded by military leaders, scientists, and diplomats from every major nation on Earth. The signal is authentic, confirmed Dr. James Wright, Earth's leading expert in alien communication protocols. The linguistic patterns match what we've learned from our limited contact with the Galactic Council. This Ambassador Zephyria is genuinely in trouble. General Marcus Thompson, head of Earth's Space Defense Force, leaned forward in his chair. What do we know about these Krex they mentioned? Dr. Wright pulled up a holographic display showing various alien species profiles. According to our database from the Galactic Council, the Krex Empire is one of the most aggressive military powers in this sector of the galaxy. They're known for their advanced weapons technology and ruthless expansion policies. And what do we know about our own capabilities compared to theirs? Asked President Rodriguez. General Thompson stood and activated another display. Our space fleet is still relatively small, but we've made significant advances since joining the Galactic Council as observers. We have 47 operational warships, ranging from destroyers to our 3 Dreadnought-class vessels. 47 ships against what the aliens describe as a war fleet, mused Defense Minister Yuki Tanaka. It doesn't sound like favorable odds. With respect, Minister, interjected Admiral Sarah Foster, we don't know the size of the Krex fleet. And our ships may be fewer in number, but they're built with human engineering. We've always had a talent for making things work under pressure. President Rodriguez looked around the table. The question before us is simple: do we respond to this distress call? These beings have shown us nothing but courtesy since we made contact. They included us in the Galactic Council despite our limited space presence. Now they're asking for help. There's another consideration, added Dr. Wright. How we respond to this situation will likely determine how the rest of the galaxy views humanity. If we ignore a distress call, we'll be seen as unreliable. If we help, even if we fail, we'll have shown that humans honor their commitments. General Thompson nodded slowly. Our forces are ready, Madam President. The question is whether you want to commit them to what could be a very dangerous mission. The room fell silent as President Rodriguez considered the weight of the decision. In the span of a few hours, humanity had gone from peaceful observation of galactic affairs to potentially entering their first interstellar war. General, how quickly can you mobilize our fleet? She asked. The nearest battle group is already on patrol in the outer system. Admiral Foster's task force includes the Dreadnought Indomitable, 6 cruisers, and 12 destroyers. They could be underway within 2 hours. Admiral Foster cleared her throat. Madam President, I should mention that several of our other battle groups are conducting training exercises in nearby systems. If we sent the recall signal, we could have our entire space fleet converged on the coordinates within 6 hours. President Rodriguez raised an eyebrow. Our entire fleet? All 47 ships? Yes, ma'am. The training exercises were designed to test our rapid deployment capabilities. This would be the perfect real-world application. The president looked around the table one more time. Every face reflected the same mixture of determination and uncertainty. They were about to commit their entire space navy to help aliens they barely knew, against an enemy they knew even less about. Very well, she said finally. Admiral Foster, you have authorization to deploy the entire Earth fleet. Send the recall signal to all battle groups and set course for the coordinates provided in the distress call. What should we tell Ambassador Zephyria? Asked Dr. Wright. President Rodriguez smiled grimly. Tell her that help is on the way. Don't specify how much help. Let's see how impressed they are when 47 human warships drop out of hyperspace. Back aboard the Harmony's Edge, the situation had grown more desperate. The Krex war fleet had moved closer, and their ships could now be seen on the long-range scanners. Ambassador Zephyria counted at least 30 vessels, including several that appeared to be heavy battleships. Ambassador, we're receiving a response to our distress call, announced Trillex, his voice filled with surprise. From whom? She asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. From the Sol system. From the humans. He paused, reading the message. They say, assistance is en route. Maintain defensive positions and await arrival of relief force. Navigator Kellex laughed bitterly. Relief force? What are they going to send, a cargo ship with some angry humans aboard? Zephyria frowned. She had read the reports about humans when they first made contact with the Galactic Council. They were described as remarkably adaptable and surprisingly innovative, despite their technological limitations. Their homeworld was apparently quite dangerous by galactic standards, having produced a species that was both intelligent and remarkably resilient. How long until the Krex fleet reaches us? She asked. 4 hours, 37 minutes, replied Kellex. And how long until the humans arrive? Trillex checked his instruments. Unknown. They didn't specify their travel time or departure schedule. As if summoned by their conversation, the ship's proximity alarm suddenly began blaring. On the main display, new contacts appeared at the edge of their sensor range. At first, there were just a few blips, but then more appeared, and more, until the display showed dozens of incoming vessels. Are those the Krex reinforcements? Asked Kellex, his voice tight with fear. Trillex studied his readouts carefully, his expression shifting from fear to confusion to amazement. No, sir. The energy signatures are completely different. And they're coming from the direction of the Sol system. How many ships? Zephyria asked quietly. I'm reading 47 distinct contacts, Ambassador. All of them appear to be military vessels. The bridge fell silent except for the hum of the ship systems. 47 ships. The humans had sent 47 warships in response to their distress call. Get me a visual as soon as they're in range, Zephyria ordered, her voice barely above a whisper. Within minutes, the first human ships began to resolve on their screens. They were unlike any vessels in the Galactic Council fleet. Where most council ships were smooth and elegant, the human vessels looked like they had been built for war. Angular hulls bristled with weapons arrays, their dark surfaces broken by the bright blue glow of their propulsion systems. The lead ship was massive, easily twice the size of anything in the Krek's war fleet. Its hull was scarred and reinforced, giving it the appearance of a vessel that had been through countless battles. Following behind it came a formation of smaller but equally intimidating warships, their weapons already powered and ready. "Ambassador," Trilix whispered, "I'm receiving a communication from the lead human vessel." "Put it through," she replied, her voice steady despite her amazement. The face that appeared on their screen was that of a middle-aged human female, her expression calm and professional. Her uniform bore insignia that Zephyria recognized as indicating high military rank. "Ambassador Zephyria, this is Admiral Sarah Foster of the Earth Space Defense Force, commanding officer of the Dreadnought Indomitable. We received your distress call and have come to provide assistance." Zephyria found herself struggling for words. "Admiral Foster, we are grateful for your response. But, you should know that you're facing a significant Krek's war fleet. At least 30 vessels, including heavy battleships." Admiral Foster's expression didn't change. "Understood, Ambassador. We've detected the Krek's forces on our sensors. 32 vessels total, including 4 battleships and 8 heavy cruisers." "Admiral, with all due respect to your courage, this may be more than your force can handle," Zephyria said carefully. "The Krek's are experienced in space warfare." For the first time, Admiral Foster smiled, and there was something in that expression that made Zephyria's breath catch. It was the smile of a predator that had just spotted its prey. "Ambassador, there's something you should know about humans," the Admiral said. "We've been preparing for space warfare since before we could actually travel between the stars. Every one of my ships has been designed by a species that has been fighting wars for thousands of years. My crews have trained for scenarios exactly like this." She paused, glancing at something off-screen before continuing. "Besides, the Krek's made one critical error in their calculations." "What error?" Zephyria asked. Admiral Foster's smile widened. "They asked for a fight with humans." Admiral Foster cut the communication link and turned to face her bridge crew aboard the Indomitable. The massive Dreadnought's command center buzzed with controlled activity as officers prepared for what would be humanity's first major space battle. "Tactical assessment, Commander Hayes," she ordered. Commander David Hayes, her tactical officer, brought up a three-dimensional display of the battlefield. Red dots represented the Krek's fleet, while blue markers showed the positions of the human vessels. "The Krek's have formed a standard battle formation," Hayes reported. "For battleships in the center, supported by 8 heavy cruisers on the flanks. Their remaining 20 light vessels are spread in a screening formation. Classic Imperial doctrine, designed to overwhelm opponents through concentrated firepower." "And what do we know about their weapons technology?" asked Foster. Lieutenant Chen, the ship's intelligence officer, stepped forward. "Based on Galactic Council records, the Krek's use primarily plasma-based weapons and particle beam arrays. Their ships are heavily armored but rely on traditional energy shielding. They've been using the same basic ship designs for over 2 centuries." Foster nodded thoughtfully. The Krek's were experienced, but experience could also mean complacency. "Communications, patch me through to all fleet commanders." Within moments, the faces of 12 human ship captains appeared on the main display. Each represented a battle group that had converged on this location, bringing together the entire strength of Earth's space navy. "Ladies and gentlemen," Admiral Foster began, "we're about to engage in humanity's first major space battle. The enemy outnumbers us and has significantly more combat experience. However, they're expecting to fight a typical Galactic Council force using standard tactics." Captain Rodriguez of the cruiser Defiant spoke up. "What are our orders, Admiral?" "We're going to show them something they've never seen before," Foster replied. "We're going to fight like humans." She activated the tactical display so all the captains could see her plan. "Battle Group Alpha will make the initial approach, appearing to use standard Council formation tactics. The Krek's will likely respond by concentrating their fire on our lead ships, expecting us to engage in a traditional slugging match." Captain Singh of the destroyer Rapid Fire frowned. "That puts Alpha Group at significant risk, Admiral." "Which is why Alpha Group consists entirely of our fastest ships," Foster explained. "Captain Rodriguez, your orders are to engage the Krek's screening forces and then withdraw. Make it look like we're retreating." Understanding dawned on several faces. Captain Lee of the cruiser Persistence smiled grimly. While they're pursuing Alpha Group, the rest of us will be moving into position. Exactly. Battle Groups Beta and Gamma will use the asteroid field to mask their approach. Once Alpha Group has drawn the Krex forces into pursuit, you'll emerge from the asteroids and hit their flank and rear simultaneously. Captain Torres of the battleship Relentless studied the plan carefully. It's a classic pincer movement, but executed in 3 dimensions. The Krex won't expect such coordination from what they consider a primitive species. There's one more element, Foster added. The Indomitable and Battle Group Delta will remain in reserve until the Krex commit to pursuing Alpha Group. Then, we'll make a direct assault on their command ships. The captains absorbed the plan, each mentally rehearsing their role in the coming battle. These men and women had trained together for years, perfecting the kind of coordinated tactics that had made human military forces so effective throughout their history. Questions? Foster asked. Captain Kim of the destroyer Hurricane raised her hand. Admiral, what if they don't take the bait? What if they maintain their formation? Foster's expression hardened. Then, we'll hit them head on and show them why humans don't back down from a fight. But, trust me, Captain, the Krex have been winning battles the same way for centuries. They won't be able to resist pursuing what appears to be a fleeing enemy. Time to enemy contact, asked Captain Rodriguez. Hayes checked his instruments. The Krex fleet will be in weapons range in 43 minutes, Admiral. All ships, move to your assigned positions. Execute Plan Hammer. Good hunting, everyone. The communications channels closed, and, across the human fleet, ships began moving into their predetermined positions. The smaller destroyers and cruisers of Alpha Group formed up in what appeared to be a standard attack formation, while the other battle groups used their superior maneuverability to slip away toward the asteroid field that bordered this region of space. Meanwhile, aboard the Krex command ship Dominator, Fleet Admiral Vorthak studied the approaching human vessels with a mixture of amusement and disdain. His scaled reptilian face showed no concern as he watched the tactical display. The humans are approaching in standard council formation, reported his tactical officer. 21 vessels in the first wave. Vorthak's jaw plates clicked together in what passed for laughter among his species. Foolish mammals. They think to face the Krex Empire with their primitive ships and inexperienced crews. Should we adjust our formation, Admiral? Asked his second-in-command. No. We will demonstrate Krex superiority by destroying their lead ships quickly and efficiently. Once their morale breaks, the remaining vessels will flee. He paused, studying the display more carefully. Though I admit I'm curious about their largest ship. Intelligence reports suggest it's nearly twice the size of our battleships. It appears to be holding back with a reserve force, the tactical officer noted. Perhaps their commander lacks the courage to commit his flagship to the battle. Vorthak nodded approvingly. As expected from such a young species. They lack the killer instinct necessary for space warfare. Back aboard the Indomitable, Admiral Foster watched as the distance between the two fleets continued to close. The Krex maintained their formation exactly as predicted, their commanders confident in their superiority. Alpha Group reports ready to engage, announced Commander Hayes. Very good. Signal all groups, execute on my mark. Foster watched as the range counter continued to decrease. At exactly 50,000 kilometers, she gave the order. Execute. The space around the asteroid field suddenly erupted with weapons fire as Alpha Group engaged the Krex screening forces. Human destroyers and cruisers moved with surprising speed and agility, their weapon systems proving more accurate than the Krex had expected. The first exchange of fire revealed something that shocked the Krex commanders. Instead of the weak energy weapons they had expected, the human ships unleashed a devastating barrage of kinetic projectiles, plasma cannons, and what appeared to be some form of directed energy beam that could punch through Krex shields with alarming ease. Damage report, barked Vorthak as his ship shuddered under the impact of human weapons. For screening vessels destroyed, 3 more heavily damaged, came the reply. Admiral, their weapons are more powerful than intelligence indicated. Vorthak's eyes narrowed as he watched the human ships begin to withdraw. They had struck hard and fast, then pulled back before his heavier ships could respond effectively. It was exactly what he would have done in their position. All ships, pursue the retreating humans, he ordered. We will not allow them to escape after drawing first blood. The Krex fleet began to move forward, their formation stretching out as faster ships moved ahead to chase the withdrawing human vessels. It was exactly what Admiral Foster had hoped for. Krek's forces are pursuing Alpha Group, reported Hayes. They're breaking formation just as projected. Signal Beta and Gamma groups, Foster ordered. Begin your approach. Hidden among the asteroids, 30 human warships began moving toward their attack positions. The Kreks, focused on pursuing Alpha Group, failed to detect the approaching threat until it was too late. Captain Singh led the first wave, his destroyer rapid fire emerging from behind a massive asteroid to unleash a full spread of torpedoes at the exposed flank of a Krek's heavy cruiser. The enemy ship's shields flared and collapsed under the unexpected assault. "This is Sierra 7, we have achieved complete surprise," Singh reported over the tactical network. Beginning attack run on target cluster Bravo. All across the battlefield, human ships emerged from the asteroid field like predators emerging from cover. Their attack was perfectly coordinated, with each ship knowing exactly which target to engage and when to fire. The Krek's fleet found itself caught between the retreating Alpha Group, which had suddenly turned to attack again, and the fresh forces emerging from the asteroids. Their neat formation dissolved into chaos as ships tried to turn to face threats from multiple directions. "Admiral, we're under attack from 3 directions," the tactical officer reported to Vorthak. "They've coordinated a multi-vector assault." For the first time since the battle began, Vorthak felt a chill of concern. This level of tactical sophistication was far beyond what he had expected from such a young species. "How many human ships are engaged?" he demanded. "I'm counting 47 distinct vessels, sir. It appears to be their entire fleet." Vorthak's blood ran cold. The humans had committed everything they had to this battle. They weren't just responding to a distress call, they were making a statement. "All battleships, concentrate fire on their largest vessels," he ordered. "We must break their formation before they can complete their encirclement." But, even as he gave the order, Vorthak realized it was too late. The humans had already achieved their tactical objectives. His fleet was scattered, his screening forces were decimated, and enemy ships were now attacking from positions that should have been impossible to reach undetected. On the bridge of the Indomitable, Admiral Foster watched with satisfaction as her plan unfolded exactly as designed. The Krek's fleet was in disarray, their commanders struggling to respond to tactics they had never encountered before. "All battle groups report successful engagement," Hayes announced. "Enemy formation is broken. We have them scattered and confused." "Excellent. Signal Battle Group Delta. It's time to finish this." Foster turned to her helmsman. "Take us in, full speed. Target their command ship." The massive dreadnought surged forward, its engines glowing bright blue as it accelerated toward the heart of the Krek's fleet. Behind it came the remaining human battleships and heavy cruisers, their weapons charging for the decisive blow. Vorthak watched in growing alarm as the human flagship approached. The vessel was enormous, and, as it drew closer, he could see that its hull was covered in weapon systems unlike anything in the Galactic Council databases. "Open fire on their flagship," he commanded. "All ships, concentrate on the lead human vessel." Krek's plasma cannons and particle beams lanced out toward the Indomitable, but the human ship's shields absorbed the punishment while returning fire with weapons that defied easy categorization. Kinetic rounds moving at significant fractions of light speed struck Krek's vessels with devastating force, while energy weapons cut through armor plating like it was paper. "Their shields are holding," the tactical officer reported in disbelief. "How is that possible?" Vorthak had no answer. Everything he thought he knew about human technology was proving to be wrong. These weren't the primitive vessels of a young species. They were the products of a military tradition that had been perfecting the art of warfare for millennia. As the Indomitable closed to point-blank range, Admiral Foster opened a communication channel to the Krek's flagship. "Fleet Admiral Vorthak, this is Admiral Foster. You have 30 seconds to order your fleet to surrender, or I will demonstrate what human weapons can do to your command ship." Vorthak stared at the transmission in shock. How did this human know his name and rank? "You cannot defeat the Krek's empire with mere tricks," he replied, though his voice lacked its earlier confidence. Foster smiled coldly. "Admiral, you made 2 critical errors today. First, you assumed that because we're young, we're weak. Second, you attacked diplomatic vessels under Galactic Council protection." She paused, letting her words sink in. "Humans take a very dim view of those who attack diplomats. Surrender now, and your crews will be treated according to galactic law. Continue fighting, and discover why humans have survived on one of the most dangerous planets in the galaxy. The communication channel closed, leaving Vorthak to stare at his tactical display in growing desperation. His fleet had been outmaneuvered, outgunned, and outsmarted by a species that was supposed to be inferior. Around him, his officers waited for orders that he was no longer sure how to give. Fleet Admiral Vorthak stared at his tactical display as the reality of his situation became undeniably clear. In the span of 20 minutes, his supposedly superior Krex war fleet had been systematically dismantled by human forces using tactics he had never encountered in 2 centuries of military service. Admiral, the Subjugator and Iron Fist are reporting critical damage, his communications officer announced. The Relentless Fury has lost main power and is drifting. How many vessels do we have left in fighting condition? Vorthak asked, though he dreaded the answer. His tactical officer's scales had turned pale with stress. 14 ships still operational, sir. We've lost 18 vessels, with most of the remainder taking significant damage. Vorthak closed his eyes briefly. In his entire military career, he had never suffered such a devastating defeat. The humans had not only outfought his fleet but had done so while taking minimal casualties themselves. Status of human forces, he asked quietly. 3 of their smaller vessels have taken damage, but none appear to be seriously impaired. Their main fleet is maintaining formation and continuing to advance on our position. Through the viewport of his command ship, Vorthak could see the human dreadnought Indomitable approaching. The massive vessel moved with a grace that belied its size, its weapons still glowing with residual energy from the devastating barrage it had unleashed on his heavy cruisers. Sir, his second-in-command spoke hesitantly, perhaps we should consider the human admiral's offer. Vorthak turned to look at his old friend and trusted advisor. Commander Skelix had served beside him for over 50 years, and never once had he suggested retreat or surrender. You believe we should yield to these mammals? Vorthak asked, his voice carrying a mixture of disbelief and resignation. Admiral, I believe we should recognize when we have been outmatched by superior tactics and technology, Skelix replied carefully. Our intelligence about human capabilities was clearly inadequate. Before Vorthak could respond, his communications officer spoke up. Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the diplomatic vessel we were pursuing. Put it through, Vorthak ordered, curious to hear from the aliens whose distress call had brought this disaster upon his fleet. Ambassador Zephyria's face appeared on the main screen, her large black eyes filled with what could only be described as amazement mixed with concern. Fleet Admiral Vorthak, this is Ambassador Zephyria. I am authorized by the Galactic Council to offer you terms for the cessation of hostilities. Vorthak's jaw plates clicked in bitter amusement. You wish to offer me terms, Ambassador? I was not aware that diplomatic vessels carried such authority. Under Galactic Council Resolution 2847, any accredited ambassador may negotiate the surrender of hostile forces when they are engaged in the protection of Council assets, Zephyria replied formally. I am offering you and your crews the opportunity to surrender with honor. Honor? Vorthak's voice carried years of military pride and the sting of unexpected defeat. What honor is there in yielding to a species that has barely left their home system? It was Admiral Foster's voice that answered, though she remained off-screen. Admiral Vorthak, the honor lies in recognizing when you're beaten and choosing to preserve the lives of your crews rather than your pride. The human admiral stepped into view beside Ambassador Zephyria, and Vorthak was struck by the complete lack of gloating in her expression. She looked tired, professional, and strangely sympathetic. Admiral, Foster continued, I've reviewed the tactical records of this engagement. Your fleet fought well within the constraints of your doctrine. You were defeated by superior intelligence and tactics, not by cowardice or incompetence. Superior intelligence, Vorthak repeated slowly. You knew we were coming. Foster nodded. We've been monitoring Krex military communications for several weeks. Your Empire's tendency to broadcast operational plans on supposedly secure channels made it relatively easy to predict your movements. Impossible. Our encryption is quantum-level security. Yes, we noticed. Unfortunately for you, humans have been working on quantum decryption methods for the past 15 years. We broke your codes 3 months ago. The revelation hit Vorthak like a physical blow. Not only had the humans outfought his fleet, they had been reading his communications throughout the entire operation. Every strategic decision, every tactical plan, every contingency had been known to the enemy before the battle even began. Commander Hayes's voice came from off-screen. Admiral Foster, we're receiving surrender signals from multiple Krex vessels. It appears their crews are making the decision independently. Foster looked back at Vorthak. Admiral, your subordinates are showing wisdom. I suggest you follow their example. On his bridge, Vorthak could hear the reports coming in from his surviving ships. One by one, his captains were powering down their weapons and transmitting surrender codes. The fight had gone out of his fleet, and continuing the battle would only result in unnecessary casualties. What terms do you offer? He asked finally. Ambassador Zephyria stepped forward. All Krex personnel will be treated according to Galactic Council conventions regarding prisoners of war. Your wounded will receive medical care, and your crews will be repatriated to Krex space once this conflict is resolved. And, myself? You will be turned over to Galactic Council authorities for trial on charges of unprovoked aggression against diplomatic vessels, Zephyria replied. However, your cooperation in ending this battle without further bloodshed will be noted in all official reports. Foster added, Admiral, I want you to understand something. This battle was not about revenge or conquest. We responded to a distress call because it was the right thing to do. How you and your crews are treated from this point forward depends entirely on how you choose to conduct yourselves. Vorthak looked around his bridge at the faces of his officers. These beings had served the Krex Empire faithfully for decades, and they deserved better than to die for his miscalculation. Very well, he said finally. All Krex vessels, this is Admiral Vorthak. Ceasefire and power down all weapons systems. Transmit surrender codes and prepare to be boarded according to Galactic Council protocols. The acknowledgements came back quickly from his remaining ships. Within minutes, the space around the diplomatic vessel was quiet except for the low hum of engines and the soft communication chatter between human ships organizing the surrender process. Admiral Foster, Ambassador Zephyria said quietly, on behalf of the Galactic Council, I want to express our gratitude for your intervention. Without human assistance, this incident could have resulted in a significant diplomatic crisis. Foster nodded. We're just glad we could help, Ambassador. Though I suspect this is going to raise some questions about humanity's role in the galactic community. Indeed it will, Zephyria agreed. I have a feeling that the Council's perception of human capabilities may need some significant revision. Over the next several hours, human boarding parties took control of the surrendering Krex vessels. The process was conducted with professional efficiency that impressed even the defeated Krex crews. Human medics worked alongside their own medical personnel to treat the wounded, while human engineers helped assess and repair damaged life support systems. Captain Rodriguez of the Defiant was leading one such boarding party when she encountered something that would later become part of human military legend. As she entered the bridge of a damaged Krex cruiser, she found the ship's captain, a grizzled veteran named Carix, directing repair efforts despite suffering from a serious head wound. Captain, you need medical attention, Rodriguez told him through the translation device. Carix looked up at the human officer with something approaching respect. Your people fight like warriors born, he said. I have served the Krex fleet for 60 standard years, and I have never seen such coordination and tactical innovation. Thank you, Captain, Rodriguez replied. But, right now, let's focus on getting you and your crew the help you need. As Carix was escorted to the medical bay, he paused and turned back to Rodriguez. Captain, may I ask you a question? Of course. How long have your people been preparing for space warfare? Rodriguez considered the question carefully. Captain, humans have been preparing for warfare since we first learned to use tools. Space was just another battlefield to us. The answer seemed to satisfy something in Carix's mind, and he nodded slowly before allowing the medics to lead him away. Similar conversations were taking place throughout the Krex fleet as human boarding parties secured the vessels. The defeated aliens were discovering that their captors were not the primitive savages they had expected, but professional military personnel who understood both the necessities of war and the responsibilities of victory. Aboard the Indomitable, Admiral Foster was receiving reports from her captains when Dr. Wright, who had accompanied the fleet as a diplomatic observer, approached her. Admiral, I've been monitoring communications from the Krex fleet, he said. There's something you should know. What is it, Doctor? The Krex crews are apparently amazed by our treatment of prisoners. According to their intercepted communications, they expected to be executed or enslaved. Foster frowned. Why would they expect that? Because that's apparently what the Krex Empire does to defeated enemies. Their entire military doctrine is based on the concept that might makes right, and the strong have no obligations to the weak. That explains their shock at our offer of surrender terms, Foster mused. They literally couldn't understand why we would show mercy to defeated foes. Dr. Wright nodded. It gets more interesting, Admiral. Several of their officers have specifically requested to speak with human commanders about our tactical methods. They seem genuinely curious about how we achieved such a decisive victory. Are you suggesting we share military secrets with our former enemies? I'm suggesting that these beings have never encountered the concept of honorable warfare. They've spent centuries believing that military might alone determines the outcome of conflicts. Today they discovered that intelligence, coordination, and moral purpose can be more powerful than raw firepower. Foster considered this information as she watched the final stages of the surrender process through the bridge viewports. The human fleet had achieved something unprecedented in galactic military history, a complete tactical victory achieved through superior planning and execution rather than overwhelming force. Doctor, I want you to compile a full report on this engagement for transmission to Earth. Include the tactical analysis, the intelligence breakdown of Krex capabilities, and, especially the cultural observations about their treatment of prisoners. Already working on it, Admiral. Though I suspect the most important part of this report won't be the military analysis. What do you mean? Dr. Wright gestured toward the tactical display, where human ships were shown coordinating rescue and repair operations among the defeated Krex fleet. Admiral, what happened here today is going to change how the entire galaxy views humanity. We didn't just win a battle, we demonstrated something that the galactic community apparently doesn't see very often, a species that fights when necessary but shows mercy when possible. As if to underscore his point, a communication came in from Ambassador Zephyria. Admiral Foster, I've just received a priority transmission from the Galactic Council emergency session. They're requesting a full briefing on this incident, including detailed analysis of human military capabilities and tactical doctrines. Foster smiled grimly. I suspect they're going to be very surprised by what they learn. Indeed, Zephyria replied. Admiral, I believe this day will be remembered as the moment when humanity announced itself as a major power in galactic affairs. Looking out at the stars, Admiral Foster wondered if humanity was truly ready for that responsibility. Today they had proven they could fight and win against a superior force. Tomorrow, they would need to prove they could handle the peace that followed. 3 days after the battle, Admiral Foster stood in the main conference room aboard the Indomitable, facing what might be the most important meeting in human history. Representatives from 12 different galactic civilizations had arrived to witness the formal proceedings that would determine the future of humanity's role in the galactic community. Ambassador Zephyria sat at the head of the table, her normally composed demeanor showing signs of the stress she had endured over the past week. Beside her sat High Counselor Mordex of the Galactic Council, a being whose species had been instrumental in founding the interstellar organization centuries ago. Admiral Foster, High Counselor Mordex began, his translated voice carrying undertones of curiosity mixed with caution. The Council has reviewed the preliminary reports of this engagement. We find ourselves in need of clarification on several points. I'm at your disposal, High Counselor, Foster replied formally. First, we must understand how humanity was able to mobilize such a substantial fleet so quickly. Our records indicate that your species has been spacefaring for less than 50 Earth years. Foster exchanged glances with Dr. Wright, who had been appointed as humanity's diplomatic representative for this meeting. High Counselor, human civilization has been studying warfare for thousands of years, Dr. Wright explained. When we achieved spaceflight, we immediately began adapting our military doctrines to three-dimensional combat. Our fleet may be numerically small, but every ship was designed and built with combat effectiveness as the primary consideration. This brings us to our second question, interjected Counselor Ithera, whose crystalline form pulsed with different colors as she spoke. Your weapons technology appears to be significantly more advanced than our initial assessments suggested. How do you explain this discrepancy? Admiral Foster leaned forward. Counselor, may I speak frankly? Please do. When humanity first made contact with the Galactic Council, we were excited to learn about peaceful cooperation between species. However, we also noticed that most council members seem to have relatively modest military capabilities. This suggested either that warfare was uncommon in galactic civilization, or that most species had not prioritized military development. "And, which conclusion did you reach?" asked High Counselor Mordex. "We concluded that peaceful species might need protection from those who were not so peaceful," Foster replied. "The Krex Empire, for example, has been expanding aggressively for decades while Council forces seemed unable to stop them." Counselor Vlex, a being whose species had recently lost 2 colonies to Krex expansion, spoke up with obvious interest. "Are you saying that humanity developed advanced military technology specifically to counter threats like the Krex?" "Among others, yes," Dr. Wright confirmed. "We believe that peace is best preserved by being prepared for war." Ambassador Zephyria cleared her throat. "If I may interject, the Council is particularly interested in understanding human tactical doctrines. The coordination displayed during the engagement was unlike anything in our military archives." "That's because human military thinking emphasizes adaptability and innovation," Foster explained. "Most galactic militaries appear to rely on standard formations and predictable tactics. Humans are trained to think creatively and respond to unexpected situations. This creativity nearly resulted in the complete destruction of a Krex war fleet," observed High Counselor Mordex. "Are all human military operations conducted with such effectiveness?" Foster chose her words carefully. "High Counselor, the Krex attacked diplomatic vessels under Council protection. By any measure, that was an act of war. However, we chose to accept their surrender rather than destroy them completely. We believe that demonstrates both our military capabilities and our commitment to Council principles." "Indeed," agreed Counselor Ithera. "Which brings us to the most important question before this body: what does humanity want from the galactic community?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. Foster realized that her answer would determine not just humanity's relationship with the Council, but, potentially, the balance of power in this entire region of the galaxy. "Counselor, humanity seeks the same thing we've always sought: peace, prosperity, and the freedom to develop our civilization without interference from hostile forces. And yet you've just demonstrated that you possess one of the most powerful military forces in known space," pointed out Counselor Vlex. Dr. Wright stood up. "Counselors, if I may share something about human history. Throughout our development, we've learned that the best way to preserve peace is to make aggression too costly for potential enemies to consider. This doesn't mean we seek conflict, but rather that we prepare for it so thoroughly that others will choose negotiation over warfare. A philosophy of deterrence," mused High Counselor Mordex. "Interesting. And if a species chooses warfare despite your preparedness?" "Then, they discover why peace was the better option," Admiral Foster replied simply. The various alien representatives exchanged glances and communication signals in frequencies humans couldn't hear. Finally, High Counselor Mordex spoke again. "Admiral, we have received a communication from the Krex Empire's High Command. They are requesting immediate negotiation of a ceasefire agreement." Foster raised an eyebrow. That was fast. The battle was only 3 days ago. "According to our intelligence sources, your tactical recordings have been analyzed by every major military power in this sector of the galaxy. The Krex High Command apparently concluded that continued hostilities with humanity would be inadvisable." Ambassador Zephyria pulled up a holographic display showing a formal communication from the Krex Empire. "They're offering to return all captured Council vessels and personnel, withdraw from disputed territories, and submit to binding arbitration for their expansionist activities over the past decade." "All of this because of one battle?" Dr. Wright asked in amazement. "Doctor, you must understand," explained Counselor Ithera, "military information travels quickly in galactic civilization. Within hours of your engagement with the Krex fleet, tactical analyses were being studied by military planners across dozens of star systems." High Counselor Mordex activated another display. "We have reports of 3 different aggressive species immediately halting expansion operations after reviewing the battle data. Apparently, the prospect of facing human tactical innovation has caused a general reassessment of military priorities." Foster felt a chill as the implications became clear. "High Counselor, are you suggesting that one battle has significantly altered the balance of power in this region?" "Admiral, I'm telling you that one battle has prevented what our analysts predicted would be at least 3 major wars over the next decade." The room fell silent as the magnitude of this revelation sank in. Humanity had not just won a battle, they had apparently created a new form of deterrence that was reshaping galactic politics. This presents us with both an opportunity and a responsibility, continued High Counselor Mordex. The Council would like to offer humanity full membership status, along with a permanent seat on the Security Committee. Dr. Wright blinked in surprise. High Counselor, that's an enormous honor, but also a significant responsibility. May I ask what would be expected of humanity in such a role? Doctor, the galaxy needs protectors who can fight when necessary but choose peace when possible. Today's engagement suggests that humanity might be uniquely qualified for such a role. Admiral Foster looked around the table at the assembled alien representatives. What about species that might view human military capabilities as a threat rather than a protection? Counselor Blex answered with what might have been amusement in his voice. Admiral, after reviewing your battle tactics, most species are more interested in being your allies than your enemies. Ambassador Zephyria leaned forward. There is one more matter that requires discussion. Fleet Admiral Vorthak has requested to meet with you personally, Admiral Foster. For what purpose? He claims he has information about other potential threats that the Council needs to know about. Apparently, his defeat has convinced him that galactic security requires what he calls human-style thinking. Foster considered this request carefully. Ambassador, I'll meet with him, but I want it understood that this doesn't change his status as a prisoner of war. Of course. The meeting will be conducted under full diplomatic protocols. 2 hours later, Foster found herself in the detention bay aboard the Indomitable, sitting across a table from the Krex admiral who had led the attack on Ambassador Zephyria's ship. Vorthak looked older than in their previous communication, his scales dulled by the stress of defeat and captivity. Admiral Foster, he began formally, I want to thank you for agreeing to this meeting. Admiral Vorthak. I understand you have information you wish to share. Vorthak activated a small data pad that had been provided for the meeting. Admiral, the Krex Empire is not the greatest threat facing galactic civilization. We were merely the most visible. He brought up a star chart showing the galactic region beyond Krex space. There are 3 other aggressive civilizations that have been preparing for large-scale expansion. The Krex attacks were intended to test Council response capabilities before these other powers made their moves. Foster studied the display carefully. And, now? Now they know that humanity exists, and they're terrified, Vorthak replied bluntly. But fear can make rational beings do irrational things. Some of them may decide that humanity must be destroyed before it becomes too powerful to defeat. Are you suggesting that this battle may have prevented some conflicts while potentially starting others? I'm suggesting that galactic civilization is about to change dramatically, and humanity is going to be at the center of those changes whether you want to be or not. Foster sat back in her chair, absorbing the implications of this warning. Admiral, why are you telling me this? Your own empire could benefit if humanity faces attacks from other powers. Vorthak's expression became serious. Admiral, I have served in military forces for over 2 centuries. I have seen what happens when warfare becomes a tool of expansion rather than protection. Today, for the first time in decades, I witnessed a military force that fought to defend rather than conquer. He paused, choosing his words carefully. The galaxy needs more forces like yours, not fewer. If humanity is destroyed by frightened aggressive species, then civilizations like mine will continue to prey on the peaceful council members until there is nothing left but warfare and conquest. Foster realized she was receiving a perspective on galactic politics that no human had heard before. What do you recommend? Prepare for war, Admiral, but do so in a way that makes peace the more attractive option. The battle you won 3 days ago bought galactic civilization time to find a better path forward. Use that time wisely. As Foster left the meeting, she reflected on how dramatically the situation had evolved. Humanity had responded to a simple distress call and found themselves positioned as potential guardians of galactic peace. Later that evening, as the human fleet prepared to escort the surrendered Krex vessels to Council space, Admiral Foster received a priority transmission from Earth. President Rodriguez appeared on her screen, along with the entire Global Defense Council. Admiral, congratulations on a successful operation, the President began. We've been monitoring the diplomatic developments, and it appears humanity is about to take on a much larger role in galactic affairs. Yes, Madam President. The Council has offered us full membership and a seat on their Security Committee. What's your recommendation, Admiral? Foster looked out at the stars, thinking about Vorthax's warnings and the responsibilities that came with power. Madam President, I believe we should accept the Council's offer. But, we need to understand that this means humanity just became responsible for helping to keep the peace in this entire region of the galaxy. And, are we ready for that responsibility, Admiral? Foster smiled grimly. Madam President, I don't think anyone ever feels ready for that kind of responsibility. But, I believe we're as ready as any species can be. Then, you have authorization to accept the Council's offer on behalf of humanity. As the transmission ended, Foster realized that the simple distress call that had started this adventure had led humanity to a destiny they had never imagined. They had gone from observers to protectors in the span of a single battle. The stars had never seemed so full of possibilities, or responsibilities.